I have a family member who is a retired clergy, and she said you had to get to church early on Sunday morning to get a seat in the back. So here's to my front row people, and all the other rows people too. Good morning. I was thinking as I came in this morning, and all I'm here to do today is, I'm not here to deliver a flawless presentation. I'm here to celebrate my imperfection. Are you with me on that? Yeah. Okay, good. And boy, I learned that, I first came to this church way back. Jim and I were figuring out when the Quays were here. And then Roger Goodwin, who would always sit in on drums with me. And now more recently, I send greetings to Reverend Cheryl. I am not Reverend Cheryl. You may have figured that out by now. But she was very gracious to allow me this opportunity. If you haven't heard me before, this fan letter that poured in about 12 years ago from Alexandria, Virginia, from a 9-year-old girl, will tell you all you need to know about me, the man who stands before you right now. She had been dragged to one of my concerts against her will, I think, by her parents, who are old friends of mine. And much to our great surprise, she had to write a paper for school the following week. And about a month later, her dad sent me a letter. Now I can see that I don't have to explain what that is to anybody here. But, if there were some younger folks here, I would need to explain what a letter is. Take a sharp stick, dip it in some darkened fruit juice, and scratch it in concrete sequential patterns across a piece of papyrus. And then an envelope and a stamp is a whole nother Sunday morning sermon and song, but you get the meaning. So my friend Grant said, David, I thought you'd get a kick out of this. Alana had to write a paper for school after your concert. And here it is. It's got a great title. It's called David Roth. By Alana Baldwin. David Roth is my hero. He's a great singer, songwriter, guitar player, and he sang at my parents' wedding, which I did. David Roth writes funny songs and inspiring songs. His funny songs make people that are even down in the dumps laugh. His inspiring songs like Yes We Can, Practice Makes Progress. Did somebody say perfect? I thought I went over that already. Practice Makes Progress, and some others make me have confidence, courage, C-O-A-R-A-G-E, and encouragement. I knew exactly what she meant, but I loved this word the first time I saw it on the page, so I extracted the root verb from encouragement, to have cooge. So I want you to look at somebody sitting close to you and say this, if you would, if you're willing. Optional. It's really tough out there. Have cooge. Would you do that for me right now? It is tough out there. Have cooge. And then when I looked at this word on the page, I realized that Alana had given me a gift, and it all of a sudden it jumped off the page at me. What exactly cooge is this? Courage without the rage. This has become an important word for me these days. Then she continues, David Roth has been playing and singing for over 20 years. Now it's like 30. He's tall, skinny, and has gray hair. I'm amazed that even how old he is, he can still get all the high notes. That was 12 years ago. So I will endeavor possibly to hit a high note or two this morning just to see if I can. But first we're going to go into this idea of if one person can make a difference in the world. Does anybody besides me believe that's possible? Yeah. There are some days when it doesn't seem like it's possible, when everything is conspiring against me. So let's take a really inexpensive trip to Africa right now. Would you like to go to Africa with me? You don't have to even move your chair or put on 3D glasses or anything like that. Just listen to this amazing true story that I fashioned into a song about how one person made an incredible difference in the world. Now, what she did through a simple act simple act that anybody in this room could do. She changed not only the village she lived in Africa, not only the country where the village was, the continent that contained the country, the planet that contained the continent, the universe that contained the planet, but she changed the biggest thing of all that she could possibly change. What would that be? Her own life. So I've magically transformed my carbon fiber guitar into an African thumb piano. True story. 30 years ago, in the country of Kenya, they were cutting down trees till very few remained. The topsoil disappeared, the land became a desert. Life was hard to sustain. The women of the villages would go in search of firewood. Branches were scarce in this ocean of sand. One woman, Wangari, saw this taking place. She said, "We must take care of our land." So she planted a tree and planted another, in hope she might see a little change begin. She also saw before her a giant undertaking, and so she organized her friends. They were part of the movement, recovering their land, bringing back the roots of Kenya from the sand. They were moving to make their homeland green. Women planting trees. With a bag of seeds, she showed her neighbors about planting more trees, an act for which she paid them a small sum, a giant leap, and soon Wangari organized the women of the Kenya nation. They were part of the movement, recovering their land, bringing back the roots of Kenya from the sand. They were moving to make their homeland green. Here we go now. Women planting trees. And something else was happening, empowerment and strength, and this was threatening to the men who made the rules. Wangari and her women friends were making real changes, so the policemen came and broke their tools. But they never broke her spirit, even though they tried. They accused her of subversion. They arrested her for crimes she carried on in spite of them, and kept on planting trees, saplings of pride and possibility. They were part of the movement, recovering the land, bringing back the roots of Kenya from the sand. They were moving to make their homeland green. Women planting trees. This is planting tree music. "30 years later, in the country of Kenya, 30 million new trees under African skies. Wangari is the first African woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize. She began the movement, recovering her land, bringing back the roots of Kenya from the sand. She was moving to make her homeland green. Women planting trees. They are part of the movement, recovering their land, bringing back the roots of Kenya from the sand. They are moving to make their homeland green. women planting trees, women planting trees. Thank you. I've been a songwriter for a long time. I had my last part-time job in 1987 in New York City. So you are on year number 32 of my ongoing world tour. And when I started out doing this, I never thought I would be speaking or singing at churches. You know, I'm a nice Jewish boy from Chicago. But my mother was attending a New Thought church in California in the mid-1980s and kept telling the minister how utterly talented her son was. And they invited me anyway. And one of the things that's inspired, encouraged me, if you would, as a songwriter over these years, like Wangari, are ordinary people who do extraordinary things, and sometimes in the most trying, utterly trying circumstances conceivable, if they're even conceivable. Such is the scenario in this next song. A true story. Ahmed had a plastic gun, a toy that's all it was. He got it from his uncle one December just because. The older boys were rebels and he liked to play along. And one day he'd grow up to be as big and brave and strong. Israeli soldiers often searched the Jenin camps and towns. They were looking for insurgents, they were always cracking down. The residents resented these intrusions on their homes. The rebels fired rifles, the younger boys threw stones. One Thursday came another clash between these warring groups. Again the bullets, stones and rocks, the rebels and the troops. A soldier saw a gunman and he fired at a boy. The victim was a 12-year-old, his weapon was a toy. Ahmed al-Khatib was taken off to Ramallah, but his wounds were such that he was transferred off to Israel, a hospital in Haifa where the Jewish doctors did every single thing they could to help this child live. Despite their greatest efforts, Ahmed passed away. A family's worst nightmare turned reality that day, and that's when they had every reason to exact revenge, to carry out this history of this hatred between men. They could have shouted out in anger, outrage, grief, and pain. They could have caused a riot against the Jews who'd killed their son. What would they do to face this darkest hour of their lives? They donated all his organs so that others might survive. A liver for a baby, 2 kidneys for a child, 1 lung each, a girl and boy, ages 4 and 5. A woman in her 50s got the second chance she'd need. A 12-year-old received the heart of Ahmed Al-Khatim. Some were Palestinians, and some of them were Jews. The family's intention was that no one be refused. The neighbors asked the father about this decision he had reached. A heart that can forgive will bring us closer to peace. A powerful reminder to those who might forget the humanity of those who live on the other side of the fence. And somewhere in this world today, 6 people live and breathe the legacy of those who cherished Ahmed Al-Khatim. Such a powerful story. And I think I'll do one more too. I could go on and on, let me tell you. Because ordinary people do extraordinary things. And anybody in this world today, and that includes a lot of people all over this world, who doesn't think we're part of one human family, that just mystifies me. So here's to holding up the human family to its greatest good and highest good in our many shapes and forms. And yet another true story set to music. The athletes had come from all over the country to run for the gold, for the silver and bronze. Many the weeks and the months of their training, and all coming down to these games. The spectators gathered around the old field for cheering on all these young women and men. And the final event of the day was approaching. Excitement grew high to begin. The blocks were all lined up for those who would use them. The 100-yard dash was the race to be run. There were 9 resolved athletes in back of the starting line, poised for the sound of the gun. The signal was given, the pistol exploded, and so did the runners, all charging ahead. But the smallest among them, he stumbled and staggered, and fell to the asphalt instead. He gave out a cry in frustration and anguish. His dreams and his efforts all dashed in the dirt. But as sure as I'm standing here telling this story, the same goes for what next occurred. The 8 other runners pulled up on their heels, the ones who had trained for so long to compete. One by one they all turned round and they went back to help him, and they brought that young boy to his feet. Then all the 9 runners joined hands and continued the 100-yard dash, now reduced to a walk. And a banner above that said Special Olympics could not have been more on the mark. For that's how the race ended, with 9 gold medals. They came to the finish line holding hands still, and a standing ovation and 9 beaming faces said more than these words ever will. It's how the race ended, with 9 gold medals. They came to the finish line holding hands still. And a banner above that said Special Olympics said more than these words ever will. So much more than these words ever will. Feels like a good place to transition into the next part of the service. And before we do, let me just leave you with a couple of quotes. Albert Einstein, with whom I share a birthday, said, "Imagination is more important than knowledge." Eleanor Roosevelt said, "No one can make me feel inferior without my consent." Oscar Wilde said, "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken." Will Rogers said, "Actions speak louder than words, but not nearly as often." And I think of that every time I see sending thoughts and prayers on Facebook. I go, I never write that anymore. I write, "What can I do for you? What can I do for you today?" You know. So, and two more. W.H. Auden said, "We are here on earth to do good to one another. What the others are here for, I don't know." Either. And lastly, Walt Whitman, "We were together. I forget the rest."